Laura Callaway woke to a heavy sky on September 28, 2023, the gray clouds over her Ohio suburb pressing down like the ache in her chest. It had been 27 years since her daughter Rory disappeared into thin air. She hauled herself out of bed, her legs shaky as she faced the mirror. A worn photo of Rory in her school uniform clung to the frame, haunting her. Laura's hands shook as she brushed it, her voice breaking. "Oh, Rory." She bit her lip hard, no crying today. Her phone pinged. A text from Helen Carter, her rock. "You're not alone. Swing by whenever." Helen's son, Sally, vanished the same day as Rory. Laura shot back a quick, "Can I come now?" then grabbed cookies and lavender tea. She stepped out, the sleepy streets of their town screaming how nothing ever changed, except her whole world. Helen pulled her into a fierce hug, eyes brimming with their shared wound. Inside, Earl Grey scented the air as they sat, the silence thick. Helen finally spoke, voice low. "My shrink says we gotta face it, not bury it. Want to look at old pics?" Laura's throat clamped shut, but she nodded. They opened an album, birthdays, school drop-offs. Then a snapshot hit Laura like a punch. Rory and Sally at a science fair, grinning wide. "Where'd this come from?" she rasped. Helen hesitated. "The cops. They let us grab duplicates after the case went cold." Laura's heart jolted. "I didn't even know that was an option." Helen exhaled sharply. "Yeah, well, I've lost nights digging through files, hunting for something, anything." Laura flipped the page and stopped dead. A class photo by a yellow school bus, the one from that trip. But wait, why's Principal Lillian Brooks here? Helen squinted. "I thought Mr. Gregory chaperoned solo." Laura's blood raced. "He did, but she's right there." Her brain spun. A lead? Or just another tease? Helen gripped her wrist. "Laura, we've chased shadows before. Let it go." But Laura's eyes burned. "I can't." Laura stormed out of Helen's place, the photo stuffed in her purse like a live wire. Her gut wouldn't quit. Something about Principal Brooks being in that shot didn't add up, and she wasn't about to let it slide. She gunned her car toward the old school, now a crumbling relic with boarded windows and chipped paint. The rusted gate groaned as she shoved it open, the musty stink of decay hitting her hard. Inside, the halls were dark, dust swirling in the faint light, her footsteps bouncing off the walls like whispers. She ended up in the principal's office, the door barely hanging on its hinges. Old papers were scattered everywhere, faded reports, brittle and yellow. Laura dug through them, her heart hammering. Then a gruff voice stopped her cold. "Laura, what the hell are you doing here?" She whipped around. Tom Jenkins, the school's old janitor, stood there, his weathered face caught between surprise and something softer. Pity, maybe. "Tom, you nearly gave me a heart attack." Laura let out a shaky breath, but her nerves stayed wired. "I need answers. About the trip." Tom's eyes tightened. "That's ancient history. Let it go." "No chance." She yanked the photo out. "Why's Brooks in this? She wasn't supposed to be there." Tom's jaw locked up. "You're stirring up trouble, Laura. Won't bring Rory back." "Maybe not, but I'm done sitting on my hands." Her voice broke. "Please, Tom, you were here." He scrubbed a hand over his stubbled face, sighing. "All right, but you're not gonna like what I've got." Laura's chest tightened. "Tell me." "Brooks was on the list to chaperone, but she backed out last second. Sent Mr. Gregory instead. Claimed it was a family emergency." Tom's voice had an edge. "Thing is, I saw her that morning, slipping out the back door. She looked rattled." "Rattled how?" Laura pressed. "Like she was scared stiff. Of something or someone." Tom dropped his voice. "Word around town was she owed money to some rough types. Never proved it, though." Laura's gut churned. "Why didn't you tell the police?" "I did. They brushed it off. Said it didn't mean squat." Tom's expression soured. "But Brooks? She's been a shadow ever since. Stays holed up, like she's got secrets to keep." Laura's phone buzzed. Helen, no doubt freaking out. She silenced it. "I'm going to her house. Tonight." Tom grabbed her arm. "Laura, don't. You're chasing ghosts." She pulled free. "Maybe, but one of those ghosts might be my kid." She bolted outside, the photo gripped like a lifeline. Dusk had fallen, heavy and purple, and rain started spitting on her windshield as she peeled out toward Brook Street. Her hands clamped the steering wheel, knuckles bone white. This ends now. The rain pounded Laura Callaway's windshield as she screeched to a stop outside Principal Lillian Brooks' house. The old Victorian sat like a shadow against the stormy sky, its warm lights flickering through the downpour. Laura's chest tightened. She'd waited 27 years for answers, and tonight she'd get them. She flung the car door open, rain soaking her instantly, and charged up the sagging porch steps. She hammered on the door. "Brooks, it's Laura. Open up." Nothing, just the howl of the wind. Then voices, faint but urgent, leaking from inside. Laura's gut twisted. She grabbed the doorknob, unlocked, and shoved it open. "Principal Brooks?" she called, stepping into the dim foyer. The air smelled of mildew and secrets. The voices grew louder, pulling her toward the living room. She peered around the corner and stopped dead. Brooks sat on a faded couch, her face ashen, hands clenched in her lap. A young woman, late 30s, wiry with wild eyes, loomed over her, jabbing a finger. "You knew," the woman hissed. "You've always known what they did." Laura's breath caught. The woman whirled, locking eyes with her. Recognition flashed across her face. "You're Rory's mom, aren't you? I've seen your picture." Laura's heart stuttered. "Who are you?" The woman's voice shook, raw with pain. "I'm Audrey. I was in Rory's class. I survived." Brooks lurched to her feet, panic cracking her voice. "Audrey, stop it!" "No!" Audrey snapped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "She's been hiding me all these years. She told me to stay quiet, said they'd kill me if I talked." Laura's knees wobbled. "Hiding you? From what?" Audrey's gaze dropped, her words barely audible over the storm. "The people who took us. It wasn't an accident. They sold us. To traffickers." The room spun. Laura grabbed the wall for support. "And Rory? What happened to my Rory?" Audrey's face crumpled. "She fought back, tried to run. They killed her." A guttural scream tore from Laura's throat. She sank to the floor, sobs racking her body. 27 years of hope shattered in seconds. Brooks stood frozen, guilt carved into her expression like a confession. Then a rough voice sliced through the chaos. "That's not the whole story." Laura's head snapped up. Tom Jenkins, the old janitor, stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, his face grim. "Knew you'd come here, Laura. Knew it had come to this." "What are you talking about?" Laura rasped, dragging a sleeve across her tear-streaked face. Tom stepped inside, shutting the door against the storm. "Brooks ain't the only one hiding something. I was there that day, saw it all." Laura staggered upright, fury igniting. "You were involved?" "No," Tom said sharply, his jaw tight. "But I saw who was. Kept quiet because they threatened my family." "Who?" Laura demanded, her voice ablade. "Who did this to my daughter?" Tom's eyes flicked to Brooks, then back to Laura. "The mayor, he was drowning in debt to some bad people. Made a deal, handed over kids to settle it." Laura's blood ran cold. "The mayor? He's still running this town." Tom nodded, his voice low. "Covered his tracks good, but Audrey's story, my evidence, we can bury him." Audrey's eyes widened, fear choking her. "They'll come for us." "Not if we move fast," Tom said, his tone steel. "I've got proof hidden. We take it to the feds." Laura rose, her grief hardening into rage. "Then we do it. For Rory, for Sally, for every kid they took." The rain battered the house as the three of them, Laura, Audrey, and Tom, stood united, ready to shatter the town's darkest lie. The rain pounded the roof of Tom Jenkins' beat-up truck as they sped through the storm toward his house. Laura sat in the passenger seat, soaked to the bone and trembling, not from the cold, but from the storm raging inside her. Grief gnawed at her heart. Her daughter was gone, stolen by a conspiracy she was only beginning to unravel. Rage fueled her now, a fire that refused to die. In the back seat, Audrey curled into herself, her eyes wide and darting like a cornered animal. Tom gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his voice low and rough. "Got the evidence stashed in my basement. Photos, Bank records. The mayor's dirty fingerprints are all over it. Laura turned to him, her voice sharp as a blade. And you've sat on this for 27 years? Tom's face twisted with regret. Tried to come forward once. Got a brick through my window and a note saying they'd burn my house down with me in it. I backed off. But now, with Audrey here, we've got a real shot. They skidded to a stop outside Tom's weathered bungalow on the edge of town. He killed the engine and scanned the rearview mirror. Inside, quick. Don't know who's watching. They dashed through the downpour, Tom fumbling with his keys until the door creaked open. They stumbled into the dim, musty living room, and Tom led them to a padlocked door in the corner. Basement, he grunted, yanking it open. Laura's pulse thundered as they descended the creaking stairs. The basement was a cluttered mess, stacked boxes, rusted tools, and thick cobwebs. Tom shoved a shelf aside, revealing a hidden safe bolted to the wall. He spun the dial with practiced ease, pulled the door open, and retrieved a thick manila envelope. Here, he said, thrusting it into Laura's hands. Photos spilled out, grainy images of the mayor shaking hands with shadowy figures. Bank statements showing six-figure transfers. Her hands trembled as she sifted through them. This ties him to the traffickers? Tom nodded. And more. There's a ledger in there. Names, dates. It's all connected. Audrey leaned over Laura's shoulder, her breath hitching. Wait, that's not just the mayor. She pointed at a photo, her finger shaking. That's Sheriff Daniels. He was in on it? Laura's blood turned to ice. The sheriff? He's been investigating my daughter's case for years. Tom's expression darkened. Bought and paid for. That's why it went nowhere. The realization hit Laura like a punch to the gut. Her grief morphed into something primal, a mother's fury unleashed. We can't trust the local cops. We need the feds. Audrey's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. But the mayor's got connections. He'll bury us before we even get to Columbus. Not if we move fast, Tom said, his tone steely. I know a guy, retired FBI, lives off-grid an hour from here. He'll help. Laura's phone buzzed in her pocket. Helen calling again. She ignored it, her mind racing. We go to him. Tonight. They piled back into the truck. The envelope clutched to Laura's chest like a lifeline. The storm raged harder, lightning cracking the sky open. As they pulled out, headlights flared in the rearview mirror. A black SUV lurked behind them, tailing close. Tom, Laura hissed, her voice tight. We've got company. He glanced at the mirror, his jaw tightening. Hold on. He slammed the gas, the truck lurching forward through the rain-slick streets. The SUV roared after them, gaining ground. Audrey whimpered, shrinking into the back seat. They're coming for me. They always said they'd find me. Laura twisted to look, spotting two figures in the SUV, stone-faced, eyes fixed on their prey. Who are they? Mayor's muscle, Tom growled. He knows we're on to him. The SUV slammed into their bumper, jolting them forward. Laura's head cracked against the dashboard, pain exploding behind her eyes. Tom, faster! He veered onto a muddy dirt road, tires spinning as mud sprayed the windshield. The SUV fishtailed but stayed on their tail. Ahead, a narrow bridge loomed over a swollen creek, its waters churning in the storm. Tom's grip tightened. Brace yourselves. He hit the brakes hard, skidding the truck sideways. The SUV shot past them, tires screeching as it struggled to stop. Tom floored it again, whipping the truck around and racing back toward town. Not today, he muttered under his breath. They hit the main road, the SUV scrambling to recover in the distance. Laura's heart pounded against her ribs. We can't outrun them forever? Tom's jaw clenched. Don't need to, just gotta make it to the feds. But as they rounded a bend, blue lights flashed ahead. A sheriff's cruiser sat blocking the intersection, its lights cutting through the rain. Sheriff Daniels stepped out, his face a mask of cold fury. Pull over, Tom, you're done. Laura's stomach plummeted. They were trapped. Tom eased the truck to a stop, his hand still on the wheel. Stay calm, he whispered. He doesn't know what we've got. Daniels approached, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. Evening, folks. Dangerous night for a drive. His gaze slid from Laura to Audrey, lingering. especially with a fugitive. Audrey shrank back, trembling. Laura's blood boiled. She's not a fugitive. She's a survivor. Daniel smirked, unfazed. That's so? Well, we'll sort it out at the station. He tapped the truck's hood with a gloved hand. Step out, all of you. Laura's mind raced. If they went with him, they'd disappear, just like her daughter. She glanced at Tom, who gave a subtle nod. Now, he mouthed. Laura threw the door open and bolted into the rain. Run, she screamed. Audrey scrambled after her, Tom right behind. Daniels cursed, grabbing for his radio. Back up now! They crashed through the woods, branches clawing at their faces and arms. Laura's lungs burned, her legs pumping through the mud, but she didn't stop. Not until they stumbled into a clearing and froze. A figure emerged from the shadows, gun raised. That's far enough. Laura's heart stopped. It was Helen. Laura's breath hitched as she faced Helen, her best friend of 27 years, now standing in the pouring rain with a gun trembling in her hands. The storm roared around them, but it couldn't mask the sting of betrayal cutting through Laura's heart. Helen! Laura's voice broke, raw with disbelief. You're part of this? Helen's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. I didn't have a choice, Laura. They threatened to kill me if I talked. They had pictures of Sally, of what they'd do if I didn't stay quiet. Audrey, huddled behind Tom, let out a small whimper. Tom's jaw clenched, his voice rough with anger. You sold out your own daughter. Helen flinched as if struck, the gun dipping slightly. I tried to protect her, but it was too late. The mayor had already made the deal by the time I figured it out. Her voice shattered. I've carried this guilt every single day. Laura's head spun, torn between rage and heartbreak. You could have helped us, Helen. You could have stopped this. I was scared, Helen sobbed, the gun wavering more. They're everywhere. The mayor, the sheriff, they own this town. A siren pierced the night, growing closer. Sheriff Daniels was coming. Laura's pulse raced. They were running out of time. Tom shifted, his hand brushing his coat pocket. Laura, he whispered, keep her talking. Laura swallowed hard, locking eyes with Helen. What about now? You're aiming a gun at me, at us. Is that what you want? To bury the truth with us? Helen's grip faltered, her face twisting in torment. I don't know what to do anymore. The crunch of gravel behind her announced Sheriff Daniels' arrival. He stepped out of his cruiser, boots sinking into the mud, a smirk twisting his face. Well, looks like the gang's all here. Laura's stomach twisted. They were trapped, Helen in front, Daniels behind. But she wouldn't go quietly. It's over, Sheriff. We've got proof. The feds are on their way. Daniels chuckled, a chilling, empty sound. You think the feds care about some small-town mess? By the time they get here, you'll be long gone. Tom's hand slipped into his pocket, his voice calm but firm. Not if we go live. Daniel's smirk faded. What? Tom pulled out his phone, the screen glowing in the darkness. I've been streaming this whole thing, every word. Sent it to my FBI contact in Columbus. They're watching right now. Daniel's face paled. Helen gasped, her gun slipping from her hands and hitting the ground with a dull thud. You're bluffing, she stammered. Tom's eyes glinted with resolve. Check the feed. Laura's heart surged as Daniels fumbled for his radio, barking orders that went unanswered. The distant sirens multiplied. Not one, but many, red and blue lights flashing through the trees, closing in. Daniels whirled, fury contorting his features. You idiots! You've ruined everything! He reached for his gun, but Tom moved faster, tackling him into the mud and pinning him down. Not today, you bastard! Audrey cried out, ducking for cover as federal agents stormed the scene, their shouts slicing through the storm. Hands up! Drop your weapons! Helen sank to her knees, sobbing. I'm sorry, Laura. I'm so sorry. Laura stood rooted to the spot, her mind reeling. After 27 years, the truth was finally breaking free. Hours later, the storm had cleared, leaving a bruised dawn in its wake. Laura sat on the town hall steps, a blanket around her shoulders, watching the chaos unfold. Reporters swarmed, federal agents barked orders, and the mayor was dragged from his mansion in handcuffs. Sheriff Daniels sat in a cruiser, defeated, as the trafficking ring unraveled piece by piece. Audrey stood nearby, wrapped in her own blanket, her eyes tired but no longer haunted. She'd reunited with her parents earlier, their tearful hug a small light in the darkness of so much loss. Tom approached, his face bruised but glowing with quiet triumph. "We did it, Laura. We tore the whole thing down." Laura nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah, but it doesn't bring her back." Tom's gaze softened. "Number, but it honors her and all the others." Laura looked toward the horizon, where the sun was just beginning to rise. "Rory would have been proud." A soft voice broke her thoughts. "Mrs. Callaway?" Laura turned to see Audrey holding a small worn photo, Rory's school picture. "I kept this. It reminded me of home, of her tears welled in Laura's eyes. She'd want you to have it, to remember." Audrey smiled through her own tears. "I'll never forget." Laura pulled her into a tight hug, the weight of decades easing just a fraction. They'd lost so much, but they'd found the truth, and with it, a fragile peace. Later that day, Laura stood alone at Rory's grave, fresh flowers bright against the weathered stone. She traced her daughter's name with shaky fingers, her voice a whisper. "We got him, baby girl. We finally got him." For the first time in 27 years, the pain in her chest felt lighter. Not gone, but bearable. She'd fought for her daughter, for justice, and she'd won. As she turned to leave, a breeze rustled the trees, carrying the faint sound of a laugh. Laura smiled through her tears. It was time to let go. If Rory's story moved you, please consider subscribing to follow more tales of courage and justice. Like this post to stand with Laura's fight, share it to keep the truth alive, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Every voice helps honor Rory's memory.